Trespassing in a Child's Head Unwillingly by Kitty Cat on AO3. Chapter 33. Yoichi tried his best to remain still, his eyes locked on the pencil holder. It was really the only thing of note in the office, and the only thing he could think of to keep his mind at ease. Not that it was doing much to help him, since his thoughts were elsewhere. Namely, on the man he knew was coming into the room in only a matter of minutes. Tsukuyuchi had left to go get coffee, and Yoichi knew that the door was unlocked. Still, it felt as though he was back in that vault, sitting on that cold concrete floor, trying to keep his coughing under control. His body was no longer sick as it had once been. That did not change how exhausted his brain still felt, like there was a heavy cloth draped over it. The door handle jiggled and he sat up, his gaze snapping to it. Instead of either man, though, Inko entered. She hesitantly glanced in before visibly relaxing when she saw him. "One," she whispered, moving to his side. "Is everything okay? The detective didn't tell me much, but I am all right," Yoichi told her, touching her hand softly. She sat across from him quickly, pulling the chair towards him. "I remembered that I made you a promise. I have broken enough promises in my life." Inko chuckled slightly, the sound broken. I don't... What do you mean?" she rephrased. She picked at her nails before he set a hand on hers. He didn't bother explaining, simply giving her a small smile. An explanation wouldn't help anything. At least, not to only her. It would sound like some random nonsense unless she had the full picture. And for that, they needed him. The door opened again, and Tsukuyuchi entered, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. Carrying the other 2 was a man Yoichi had seen many times over. It was a man he had seen grow and change. A man he should have seen die, just like he had watched the rest die. "You!" Inko yelled, her bag dropping to the floor. She stood up, and Tsukuyuchi quickly set down the coffees he had to grab the 2 from Toshinori. "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" She shoved a finger on his chest, pushing him back. "Inko," Toshinori whispered, setting his hands down. "What are you doing here?" And with his gaze shifted over to Yoichi. "Toshinori, sit," Tsukuyuchi said, cutting him off. They all knew how he would finish that sentence anyways. Inko turned to look at him, and Yoichi nodded slightly. The anger didn't subside, but she did sigh and walk back to her chair. Toshinori was the last one standing up, and he seemed to notice the discomfort. "Do you, have a chair?" He spoke slowly, still taking it all in. Tsukuyuchi hummed, opening up a folding chair he had tucked into a corner. He dropped it on the side of the desk so that he wasn't sitting by either Yoichi or Inko, which was probably for the best. He sat down slowly, and Tsukuyuchi passed out the coffees without a word. Inko did give Yoichi a strange glance when he took his, but he didn't care to answer it. There were more pressing concerns. "1," Tsukuyuchi spoke slowly. "You're the one who wanted this, so you should start." Toshinori's gaze narrowed. "1? Does Izuku know?" he whispered to Inko. She didn't respond, and he let out a breath. "Oh God, this complicates things." Yoichi shifted, nodding slightly. "There is no easy way to start this," Yoichi whispered. "Yes, I am aware of Izuku's parentage. He is aware of his parentage." He turned to Toshinori. "You have seen in Izuku's records that he is DID. This is the story we have decided to go with for years, but it is not the truth." He could see Inko's hands tightening in her lap, but she didn't speak. Toshinori, however, was not as smart. "DID? I'm sorry, what's happening here? I thought we made it clear during the sports festival that I haven't been in his life, Inko. I don't know anything about him, and I want to keep it that way." Yoichi winced slightly at the acknowledgement of their meeting before. He had no doubt they had, but it was the confirmation Izuku needed. "Toshinori, I will need you to shut the fuck up," he stated, turning to hold the man's gaze. A range of emotions crossed over his face before he sighed and nodded, looking at the floor. "Okay," was all he whispered. That surprised Yoichi slightly. If there was one thing the man had never been, that was docile. Toshinori, like the rest of them, was headstrong and sure. He pushed it to the side. 10 years ago in your hospital room, you gave something to Izuku. Toshinori's head popped up and Inko leaned forward in her chair. You believed it failed. It did not. It simply worked in a way you did not expect it to. A way none of us expected it to. I'm sorry, Toshinori chimed in again. Who are you even trying to be? You don't sound like the Midoriya I have seen at school. Inko went to respond before Yoichi cut her off. My name is Yoichi Shigaraki. Tsukiyuchi's eyes narrowed as well as Toshinori's. I am one of the 8 Vestiges who work with Izuku in a system given to him when Toshinori tried to pass his Quirk on and failed. Toshinori stood up quickly, wrapping his arms around his torso. His eyes were wild as he stared at Yoichi, unmoving. Inko was the first to break the silence, a small sob shaking her body. Yoichi was by her side in an instant, holding her shoulders tightly. I'm so sorry, she whispered, rubbing at her eyes. I was such an idiot. She held Yoichi's hands, eyes squeezed shut. Yoichi shook his head, crouching down. It is not you. Please do not blame yourself. He comforted her, kissing the tops of her hands gently. It wasn't safe to tell you, but we have little choice now. Her body shook heavily, her grip tightening on her hands. I should have never fallen in love with him. I knew it would only bring pain. All those years I tried to hold on to some type of hope. Her words were slow, broken by sobs and gasps of air. Yoichi didn't speak, knowing that nothing he could say would matter right now. He would get to what he needed to say in some time. But this came first. Inko had been there for years, always behind Izuku and the rest of them. She deserved so much more than any of them could give her for all she had sacrificed. A few minutes more when it hurt. Tsukiyuchi was the one to break the silence as Inko calmed. Shigaraki, I assume in relation to our friend in the League of Villains, he whispered. Yoichi kissed Inko's hands again, standing up slowly. Not in the way you think. That is a different matter, one that I am not the one to tell. Tsukiyuchi went to comment before Toshinori jumped in. What the hell do you mean I failed? He asked, his voice pinched. Vestiges with the Quirk? That's not possible. There isn't a subcategory like that. Nana would have told me. And my Quirk is still mine. It's been passed on, but not to you. I promised. He was interrupted by Inko as she stood up quickly and strode across the room. Inko, Yoichi tried to say, but it was too late. Inko's fist connected with Toshinori's jaw with a loud crack. He gasped, stumbling back as she positioned her hand to swing again. She got 2 more hits in before Tsukiyuchi pulled her back, holding her tight. This doesn't solve anything, he tried to reason. Inko spit on the floor, wiping Toshinori's blood on her shirt. I'm fine. Let me go, she said, her voice tinged with anger. She brushed off her shirt, walking back to Yoichi. None of this is on you, she said, wiping her tears. I love you, and none of this is on you, she stated, kneeling down. No matter who you actually are, or what truth you kept from me, you are still in my mind my child. I raised you just as I raised Izuku, despite everything that happened. I will always love you. Yoichi paused before he nodded slightly. That wasn't something he had ever doubted, but seeing this mother's love did warm his heart slightly. Hopefully, it would make the rest of this easier. Toshinori, he spoke, his voice sharp. Inko retreated to her chair as Toshinori slowly walked back to his. Blood dripped from his nose, coating his hands as he tried to wipe it off. His 8th holder held his gaze, though it wasn't in anger, simply confusion. Nana did not tell you because she did not understand. This is something new, something that unlocked in order to save Izuku from a Quirk too powerful for his young body. You have mine, and all our other holders' Quirks stored in your body. Izuku has us. He could see Inko's brow furrow as he spoke, but he didn't mention it. Inko deserved a deeper explanation after this anyways. Shigaraki, Tsukiyuchi said softly. That is not my name. Yoichi quickly corrected. I have not been known by that name in a very long time. To you, I am one. My birth name was only disclosed to you so you would understand the situation. I am one that you will not have in those notes. Sukiyuchi nodded slightly, though it was clear he didn't fully understand. So you're telling me that you're not an alter, but a vestige? He said the word slowly before Yoichi nodded. A vestige from Toshinori's quirk. Both Inko and Toshinori went to speak, but Yoichi didn't give them a chance. It is not his quirk. It is mine, and it is ours. This is not something we wish to disclose until Izuku was much older. He looked at Toshinori, whose gaze was lowered. You have put Izuku and Katsuki Bakugou in danger with your decisions. Katsuki, Inko whispered, though the sound still filled the room. Her gaze snapped up. Why the fuck did you have to involve both of my boys? She asked Toshinori. Though her fist clenched, she made no move to punch the man again. Toshinori shook his head. I didn't know, he stuttered slightly, something that was strange to see. But that can't be right. I have my quirk, and Katsuki has it as well, Sukiyuchi finished, dropping his head into his hands. No one spoke for a moment as Yoichi let the information sink in. Inko reached over and touched his hand gently, and he nodded at her with a smile. Sukiyuchi finally looked up again, running a hand through his hair. I'm going to kill you, Toshi, he promised. Toshinori flushed before he nodded. I didn't mean for any of this, he clarified. I was simply doing what I thought the quirk needed to live. That's what Nana always told me before she died, and He paused, his eyes widening, his eyes searching Yoichi's face. Nana, is she? 7, Inko guessed with a whisper. I remember Nana. She was a teacher for a time. Oh my god, she said, the pieces clicking into place. Yoichi shook his head. That is another matter. Right now, we need to focus on one that can no longer wait. Sukiyuchi's eyes narrowed. What's that? He asked, though his posture looked anything but calm. Yoichi tightened his hold on Inko's hand. One for all is killing Katsuki. He glanced over at Toshinori. And you. Izuku's leg bounced before he jumped up from the chair to continue pacing. He was actually starting to grow tired from the constant movement, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. If he stopped, he would drown too far into everything that was happening outside. Everything he could hear and see, everything he could do nothing about because Yoichi had been right. He was not the one best suited to tell all of this. To be in a room with his mother, absent father, and a detective. He could only watch as his mother lost her temper, something he had never seen before. He saw her jump up and punch his father, his hero, her teeth gnashing. He had seen the blood on her knuckles and the blood down his face, but all he could do was watch. Nana grabbed him by the shoulders as he passed by again, picking him up with ease. Nana, he said, but she didn't let go, carrying him like a child to his carpet, a place that had gotten so cold recently. He called it a carpet, but it was no longer the one he knew. It was a scratchy gray thing, void of any of his comforts. The only items that remained were his notebooks, stacked neatly in otherwise empty shelves. He knew it was him that had done it. No one else could have. But he didn't know how to change it back. Just like everything in here, it wasn't purposeful. It just further stuck him in a pit he hadn't been able to crawl out of. Nana didn't even flinch at the new carpet texture as she sat, pulling him into her lap without a word. Dai and the others joined quickly, even En, who hovered near the back. None of them spoke, though. They were all listening to Yoichi. Killing him, Toshinori whispered, the question hanging in the air. Yoichi nodded. Both of you. Toshinori rubbed his eyes, and Yoichi sighed. I assume you already had an idea of your own condition? Toshinori's fist clenched as he stood. Sukiyuchi turned to him. What is he talking about, Toshi? I haven't heard anything from you about this. I assumed it was because I passed my quirk on to Katsuki. I've lost the time I can use any quirks, and he paused, looking at Inko before he sighed. He lifted his shirt, revealing a large scar across his torso, deep bruising and scabbing bordering it. My scar has grown worse in the past month. Inko gasped, her hands covering her mouth. 1. She whispered the title, slowly moving her hands from her face. Does Katsuki know? Toshinori set his shirt down, turning his attention to Yoichi as well. Yoichi shook his head. No. I only had my suspicions before now, and I did not want to stress anyone out. No one but me had the thought. This simply confirms it. No one spoke, so he continued. When the quirk had all its components, namely us, we acted as a sort of barrier for the power. With the barrier removed, there is nothing stopping the full potential of the quirk. The uncapped power killed me once. As each new holder took it on, it grew stronger, but so did the vestiges and the barrier. He sighed. Your body has been able to handle it for years because the quirk itself was working to keep you alive. Now that quirk function has passed on to another. Its attention is split. It cannot work to keep just one of you alive. So it's killing you both, he finished, and the words hung in the air. He knew the other vestiges would be upset he didn't tell them his thoughts. Even Kudo and Bruce hadn't been told. He wanted to think differently, wanted to believe he had simply died of a genetic issue, but he had seen how Katsuki kept coming back. Bruises that formed just from his and Izuku's gentle training, the way he was constantly tired and no matter how much sleep he got, the puking every night that he tried to hide, and the coughing that made Yoichi's skin crawl with memories of his own sickness. How do we save them? Inko whispered. How do I help young Katsuki? Toshinori asked at the same time, using the boy's given name. Yoichi knew what was behind it, though it remained unspoken. He saw Katsuki as a child of his, most likely a replacement bond for Izuku, just as Toshinori had been a replacement bond for Nana's child. Yoichi shook his head. I don't know, he said truthfully. My quirk has never been stretched so thin with no dampener, just like it has never been wielded by a blood relation to the quirk. He looked down at his hand, his eyes tracing the scars Izuku had accumulated. Izuku has been able to do amazing things with this power. I only fear it may do something similar to what is happening with Katsuki. Tsukiyuchi hummed as everyone let the truth sink in. Though it was Yoichi's quirk and they had all come to him for help, he knew he couldn't give it here. Not when his quirk was no longer his. It was Izuku's now, and he knew this. Why tell us now? Tsukiyuchi finally asked, clicking his tongue. You said you didn't want anyone to know yet. Then you tell us. Does it have something to do with the League of Villains? Yoichi took a deep breath, leaning back in the chair. He knew this line of questioning would be coming. After all, it was why they had come to Tsukiyuchi. He was the only one that any of them trusted to get things done. Yoichi eventually nodded, leaning forward in his chair. You asked about my name in relation to the young Tomura Shigaraki. As I said, I have no relation to that boy. My name was given to him by someone else. He took a deep breath. My brother, Gecko Shigaraki, gave it to him, otherwise known as All for One, my opposite half. Tsukiyuchi stood up, the motion slow and drawn out. Yoichi watched his footsteps falter before he sighed and remained in place. Are you positive about this? He finally asked. We can't afford any false information. Not with him. Inko didn't speak, but Tsukiyuchi still managed to remember her. Miss Midoriya, I need you to step out. No. Yoichi glanced over to Toshinori, his brows set in a deep line. No, he repeated. There's no one I trust more than her. This concerns Izuku now, which in extension concerns her. Inko huffed, nodding. I couldn't have said it better. If this man is a threat to my son, any of his alters, vestiges, or Katsuki, I deserve to know so I can protect them. She crossed her legs, obviously avoiding Toshinori's gaze. Tsukiyuchi still didn't sit, but he did pause to consider it. He nodded, taking a few steps back from his desk in a nervous pace. Okay, then, with all the people we know All for One has killed, we still have very little information on him. All we know is that Shigaraki Tomura, he corrected himself, staring at Yoichi, calls him sensei. He hasn't revealed anything at Tartarus. Yoichi nodded. He knew this all. What you don't know is who he truly is. Me and Gecko lived in the dawn of quirks. Our quirks were opposite. Mine allowed me to stockpile quirks and pass them on. His allowed him to take quirks and give them to others. That is the hold he has on the underground. He wants a world that is perfect. That is all he has ever wanted. Are you siding with him? Sugiyuchi asked, pausing to raise an eyebrow. Tell me seriously, do you have love for this man who's killed hundreds? Yoichi hummed. I do, he admitted. He is my brother. That does not mean that I do not believe he deserves to pay for what he has done. Death is too kind a mercy. He lost his way long ago. Toshinori spoke next. Why are we even discussing this? I took All for One in at Camino. He's behind bars and far from anyone he can use. Yoichi chuckled slightly, and Toshinori shot him a look. I apologize, he said, though he still smiled. 7 always told us you were naive, though it seems 6 may have been closer on target. You are simple-minded. Toshinori's face didn't display any anger, only curiosity. Yoichi had to admit it looked so similar to Izuku's own expression. What do you mean? Inko asked, leaning forward. Despite the fact she had no legal field, she seemed just as invested in it. She had married a pro-hero fresh from UA. His quirk is like my own. It allows him to connect to all those he's given or taken from. He knows where Tomura Shigaraki is, and has no doubt tried to contact his successor. Whether or not he has been successful is not so sure. Sugiyuchi shook his head. I assume this means that our quirk suppression methods have been unsuccessful, he stated. Yoichi nodded, and the detective sighed, running a hand over his stubbled chin. So, our priority goes to finding Tomura before he can release all Gecko. He stuttered slightly over the name. No one spoke for a few minutes before Yoichi cleared his throat. This will all come down to Izuku. Inko's head snapped over, her eyes narrowing. No, I will not have either of my boys involved, she promised. Yoichi shook his head. Izuku has been involved since he was born. Toshinori only heightened it with the quirk, and Izuku has pushed it more. He has a standing relationship with Tomura already. What? Toshinori asked. When? That isn't safe for him. If... Inko shot him a look, and he stopped talking. It was of his own volition, Yoichi explained. At the time, we had no knowledge of who the man was. But they have built up a pretty good starting base, all on the concept of hating you. He looked at Toshinori, who looked taken aback, before Yoichi continued. We can take Tomura in without force. The boy is simply that, a boy. He has yet to kill anyone directly. Despite attempting to, Sugiyuchi chimed in. Do I need to remind you of the USJ? The training camp? Camino? Yoichi didn't respond to that. He wasn't sure how to. Truthfully, he did not like the young man. Sure, he was a child, but Yoichi knew his brother's methods. The young man was probably too far gone with his beliefs. Izuku was the one who had other faiths. There was no better time. I have said all I needed to, he continued, despite all 3 moving to interrupt. I am not the one to explain this. Would you mind giving me a moment to switch out? Inko moved in without a word, grabbing Yoichi's shoulders tightly. Go ahead, she whispered. Sugiyuchi didn't argue, and neither did Toshinori, though the man looked like he wanted to. Yoichi nodded, leaning into Inko's warm touch. Izuku rammed Yoichi, wrapping his arms around the man quickly. Yoichi gasped in surprise before he moved out of his chair and into Izuku's hold. It is okay, Yoichi whispered, holding the kid tightly. It will all be over soon, and you can return to Katsuki. I am sorry to put all of this on you. Izuku shook his head, his fist tightening in the back of Yoichi's shirt. I'm sorry for never trusting you. I didn't understand why you kept everything from me, he explained. He didn't cry, though he could feel them prick his eyes. I should have understood then. Yoichi laughed slightly, and Izuku released him. You are a child. Even as adults, we are not that trusting. Leave this to us for now, okay? Izuku nodded hesitantly as they both stood and walked to the others, who shifted to make room. Nana's spot was filled with Yoichi. It was silent for a moment before Izuku spoke. Is Kachan really dying? The words were a whisper, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. Yoichi didn't respond, but Izuku knew. He couldn't lose Kachan. He was smart. He had analyzed hundreds of quirks, and he wasn't about to stop with his. He would find a way to save Kachan, and maybe his father, if he had time after. Oh, okay, so that one might, hopefully it sounds alright. That was all recorded in one sitting, so all those breaks I just kind of quieted for a little bit. So hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. You may have heard a dog barking in the background, like that last little part. Sorry about that. So I did have plans to write Nana talking to Toshinori. I really, really did. I decided not to, because we already know all the stuff about Nana, the stuff Nana would have told, Sugiyuchi and them about Tomura, because that's all she couldn't really tell them. So it probably wouldn't have went on too much longer than what I wrote, but I didn't think we needed that recap, and, I don't think she really directly talked to Toshinori, because there wasn't really time to talk directly to Toshinori, because they got to figure out, everything else that's happening right now. I don't think she talks to Toshinori in the next one. I don't think I've written her talk to Toshinori yet. I have mentioned it, but I haven't actually written it so much. Let's see, the next one is less words than this. If I can figure out how to pull those up. Oh my gosh, how do you pull that up on this? I'm using my computer for the first time, ever to look at my stuff. It's 3,000 words, so it's shorter than this one was. Probably won't be as long. Wait, that's 34. So I'm writing 35 now. So there's going to be 36 chapters. I lied. So, 34 will be a little more of, what's going to happen in 35. 35 will kind of be that main, big final thing, which I finally decided on. And 36 will most likely be closing and everything. So I just kind of skipped one. Hopefully it sounded alright though, because again, it was recorded in one session. I don't know if I have much more to say on this. So I did decide to include Inko, because my mama deserves her closure. And Yoichi did make that promise that the second it was safe, he would tell Inko what was happening. So I did include her in that because I feel like she needed to be included in that. I decided not to include any of the teachers because they didn't really need to know. They're not that big of a part in this story. As much as I love them, I do love those three. They're not a big part in the story. I think that's it for kind of all in the last one. Oh yeah, Katsuki dying. Sorry about that. There will be definitely angst. There is a lot of angst in chapter 35. 35 has a lot of angst. I do apologize for that. I will see you guys when I go ahead and read 34 in just a little bit.